Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to World Today. I'm your host, Khalid. But we will discuss two important topics today. The first, of course, is the Pakistan-Afghanistan relationship. This in the context of Mike Pompeo, who made a surprise visit to Afghanistan recently, and he did a press conference along with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani, and he said that the neighbors, here he was talking about Pakistan and Afghanistan, should back the Afghan peace talks and also of the other countries that are in the region. Now, what is the importance of Mike Pompeo's visit in all this scenario? We know that Alice Wells was here in Pakistan as well. She also talked about Pakistan and Afghanistan and the Afghan peace process, and that the Afghan peace process needs to be Afghan owned. That is also something that Pakistan has been saying all along, that Pakistan believes in an Afghan owned and Afghan led peace process. Now, our second story of the day is, of course, the media briefing given by the Director General of the ISPR, Major General Asif Ghafoor, in which he assured that the army will fulfill their election duties in a non-political and impartial manner. He also said the armed forces are not directly involved in conducting the elections that are to be held on the 25th of July this year. They will only support the Election Commission in the task that they have been sought for their help with. He said that Pakistan is headed towards the general elections, and this is the third election which will ensure the democratic process. These are the two important stories that we are going to talk about in today's show. Well, today, let me introduce to you our two important guests. On my very right is AVM Ikram BHatti Sahab. He's our regular defense analyst. Thank you very much, Bhatti Sahab, to have come and joined us on this show. Second is Javeed Rana Sahab. He's a seasoned journalist and is a regular on our shows. We will talk about these two topics to these esteemed guests, but after a short break, stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching World Today. I'm your host, Khalid. And we go to the first topic of our day, that is the relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan. This in the context of the recent visit of the US Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, who gave a surprise visit to the Afghan authorities and then had a press conference along with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani. Now, he has reiterated that the regional players need to work along with Afghanistan to back the Afghan peace talks along with the Taliban. We know that Afghan President Ashraf Ghani also talked about these Afghan peace talks, and he wants now to involve the Taliban, as he has reiterated in the past as well. Now, let's involve our guests with this. AVM Ikram BHatti Sahab, how sincere is Afghanistan this time? It is not the first time that Afghanistan has talked about involving the Taliban in peace talks, in the peace process. We've talked on and on in different shows in the past as well with you as guests, in which we have reiterated the fact that talks are the only way forward. Do you feel this time these talks are more sincere and serious?
Certainly they appear so, because this time around we can see that there are new offers, new proposals, and a new strategy is being put forward. And when we look at these statements made by the US State Department, most prominently by Mr. Pompeo and by Lisa Curtis over the last 4 to 6 weeks, we can make a few clear observations. Firstly, the Americans have now stated that they do understand, appreciate, and are cognizant of the concerns of Pakistan and Afghanistan, and they consider them to be legitimate.
Which in the past was not the case.
Which was in the past was not the case. And not only that, they are prepared to, they consider them as legitimate and they're cognizant of them, they are also prepared to consider them. And after this, we also see that they have acknowledged the role of Pakistan in the peace process. And this was also reiterated by the Afghan ambassador lately as regards the peace or the truce agreement that lasted for 3 days from the Taliban side over the Eid. And then we also see that the US State Department has also said that they are prepared to sit alongside the current Afghan government while talking to the Taliban. Earlier on, they were insisting that Taliban should speak with the Afghan government only and that they would not be part of it. Now they are prepared to be part of it. Whereas, of course, the Taliban maintain that they would like to talk to only the American side and not with the local government. But there is now a little bit of change. So they have maybe lowered the bar, and the ball is now in Taliban's court. Would they like to lower the bar also and be prepared and willing to talk to the two sides together, the Americans and the local and the current Afghan government, or they would still like to maintain their earlier stance of just talking to the Americans only.
All right.
And another observation that we can see is that the Americans have also said that they are prepared to consider placement of international troops in Afghanistan, and of course accept the role of regional players or actors or concerned parties in Afghanistan. Now all this indicates that the Americans and the Afghans are now prepared to consider a new approach to solving the entire problem.
Do you feel, sir, that is because of the fact that they have not been able to come to a solution by putting other options first?
Certainly, so far, it's been 17 years and or 2,500 American lives and about 70,000+ Pakistani lives and about 6,000-7,000 Pakistani military and paramilitary personnel, and of course a threat to the region, including China, Central Asia, Russia, Iran. So with all this, in the backdrop, I think both Americans and the Afghans have realized that a new approach is required and that they need to be more flexible. They need to consider more options and more solutions. And of course, they also feel that the Chinese, the Russians, the Turks, the Iranians are becoming little more active, if not proactive, in bringing about a solution, and they would not like to miss the boat and be still relevant and be part of the solution.
All right.
And I think with that in mind, they are now bringing in new options, and which I think indicates their sincerity towards bringing about peace in Afghanistan. And we can also be hopeful that there are backdoor communications and communication channels going on between the Taliban and the Americans, maybe directly, because as long as the Taliban are present in Qatar, that communication channel is available and must be being used of. And also we see that maybe Taliban would be willing to allow the Americans to have some sort of presence, if not altogether, evacuating their country altogether, because that is what the Americans want. They would like to have a continued presence in some form, some sort.
That they have reiterated time and again.
And if Taliban are, cognizant of that American position, and they also realize that even after 17 years, at least they have not been able to evict the Americans, while the Americans have not been able to defeat the Taliban. So this stalemate is going to continue, and the loss is that going to be only of Afghan people and Afghanistan as a country. So, and Taliban in a way would be responsible for it. So I think they could consider something in between, and they may come to a conclusion that either the American presence or a presence of international actors or international troops. It could be UN peacekeepers in any shape, because as it is, I think Taliban and the current Afghan government by themselves are, I think, not in a position, they do not have the capacity to bring in peace by themselves.
All right. Bring in peace by themselves. Now, Javeed, Rana Sahab, this is something that is an important point. You remember well that the Taliban wanted to talk to only to the Americans and at the same time, they did not want any American presence in Afghanistan in the past. They have reiterated that time and again. Now comes the option of all of a sudden this new option, the US begins to open up to Pakistan being involved in the talks, which Pakistan has always said that it wants to get involved. We get Lisa Curtis, we get Alice Wells, we get Mike Pompeo, all talking about Pakistan and its role in the Afghan peace process. But at the same time, they talk about regional players. Now, are they wanting an important role of Pakistan only in these peace talks, or do they want other players in the region as well to be involved? Your take?
I think going by what the Pentagon's report presented to the Congress,
the 119-page report,
that is very significant, and that report basically outlines the contours of the new policy, and that policy is to bring more pressure on the regional player, particularly on Pakistan, what they consider to end Afghan Taliban sanctuaries from the Pakistani side of the tribal border. That is a bigger part of that report.
All right.
And then when they talk of Iran, when they talk of Russia, I think that is where they don't have the influence to the extent that even, I mean, their influence on Afghan Taliban is being perceived a bit limited as compared to Pakistan. And more importantly, with the US relation with Iran, they are already bad. I mean, they are hostile. So there is no point of using the channel of Iran.
And there seems to be no point of return as far as US-Iran relations are concerned.
And when it comes to Russia, you know, there have been a lot of diplomatic rows going on between US and Russia. So at the end of the day, it is a Pakistan. In August last year, they tried to build up pressure on Pakistan to a tipping point where they thought they could force Pakistan, they could bully Pakistan into bringing Afghan Taliban to negotiate and win a war which they have lost in the battlefield. That did not happen. All those pressure tactics, all those threats did not work. Basically, Indians were behind it. Their lobby prevailed on White House, and at the end of the day, Donald Trump came up with the threats to Pakistan. Later on, they have realized that if they lose Pakistan, they lose everybody. That means Pakistan's policy has been that Taliban, we don't control Afghan Taliban, but they listen to us. And I think what we are basically, we are not discussing much about the role of Iran and Iran's influence on Afghan Taliban. That's very important. Iran has been providing Afghan Taliban all kinds of sanctuaries. Osama bin Laden's wife, Al-Qaeda's leader, she was provided sanctuaries inside Iran. His sons and daughters were provided sanctuaries inside Afghanistan. And you might recall Mullah Akhtar Mansoor, the previous Afghan Taliban chief, he was killed in a drone attack, in a US drone attack, while entering from Iran to Pakistan. So basically the entire western region of Afghanistan, along with the borders of Iran, that is the region from where Afghan Talibans have been operating. So in that broader picture, Americans know that if they push Pakistan too hard, and Pakistan takes the position, what the Iranians have taken the position. So I think this is very dispassionate assessment that they have, where they have finally come to a conclusion that Pakistan's role is important. But again, Americans will have to provide a huge concession. They will have to give a date for the withdrawal of their troops. Now, in between...
But they're not serious of withdrawing their troops, are they?
If they are not serious, this insurgency will continue. That means at least 70% territory is under the control of Afghan Taliban, or they have influence on that territory. Americans are saying that no, it is around close to the 50%. It's a huge territory. The writ of the government in Kabul, I say the government in Kabul, not government of Afghanistan, that is confined to highways, symbolically in the urban centers, and largely in Kabul. So with that writ, do you think they can influence Afghan Taliban?
But haven't they understood? I mean, what I fail to understand is, Javeed Saab, this is not a new thing. The Americans, due to their hardline approach as far as the Taliban and the peace process in Afghanistan is concerned, have lost a lot of time. Do you think they have learned? Have they?
I think I won't say that they haven't learned. I would say probably they have started learning.
All right.
Because the kind of the tactics that they tried to apply on Pakistan last year, that was highly inappropriate. I mean, very undiplomatic language was used, as if Pakistan was the enemy of the US. That wasn't the case. So, I mean, out of no option, now they are trying to use the role of Pakistan in a manner that there could be possible negotiation with Afghan Taliban.
All right, that is very important, Ikramullah Bhatti Sahab, because we were just talking about the 119-page report that was presented. In this report, and I state that they say that the Taliban continues to receive external support from regional actors that include Pakistan, Iran and Russia. At the same time, they say the US and Afghanistan and our allies and partners must work tirelessly and together to end external support of the insurgency. There is a very contradictory statement as far as what the US thinks of Pakistan in as a regional player in the Afghan peace process is concerned. On one hand, it is putting the blame on Pakistan. On the other hand, it is asking Pakistan for help. What is going through its mind in your point of view, sir?
You see, what's going through the American mind for the last couple of years is that it is a huge embarrassment for a sole superpower to not been able to have achieved its objective in 17 years. And a stalemate is in fact a defeat. And having gotten 2,500 of its soldiers killed, spent over $1 trillion, and achieved not nothing, but certainly not its objective. And unfortunately, when the Americans came to Afghanistan in 2001, their stated objective was to punish Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden for 9/11. So that mission was accomplished in 2011 when they killed Osama bin Laden. Mission was accomplished. They should have evacuated Afghanistan and gone back and held a victory parade in Times Square in New York. And the case
But
would
they
have
did not, and they
but
do
they did
not want, in fact.
And after that, of course, they extended their objective, they extended their presence, and then they increased the number of troops, and they discovered minerals. They wanted to be present over here to keep a watch on Pakistan's nuclear program, to keep a watch over CPAC or OBOR, and monitor China's rise, monitor Russia's resurgence, monitor Iran, look at the Gulf, and be physically present here to take any immediate tactical or kinetic action.
Aren't they putting their fingers in too many pies at the same time?
Well, they think that being the sole superpower, they have the privilege, the capacity, and to do that. And being the global policeman or the global hegemon, they consider that as their privilege, if not their right, to control the world and its resources. So hence they decided to hang on and maintain their presence, just like they have done it in the case of South Korea or Japan or Philippines or Germany after the Second World War. And unfortunately, they found Taliban over here who were not willing to accept their presence, and they considered them as foreign occupiers, and they wanted to have their country liberated. And unfortunately, they could not come to terms with the Taliban, and they have finally, as of last year in August, they decided to once again increase the kinetic pressure on the Taliban and to give a new definition to victory by physically weakening or eliminating Taliban and establishing their presence or making it acceptable to the Afghan people and the Afghan government, and continue to stay over there. So I think, and when they think that they have not achieved their objective, they have to find a reason for it which should be acceptable not only to the world but primarily to their own people. So they have been scapegoating Pakistan for the last so many years with the mantra of Pakistan having hideouts and safe havens where the Afghans, Taliban come, they recuperate or they find support, and then they go back and rejuvenated and continue their operations. Pakistan has been asking for building this border fence since 2005.
And you remember all the retaliation that came from the Afghan side when we started to build that fence.
And the Americans never supported us. and which means that they were not actually very sincere in preventing this cross-border movement. Had they been sincere, they would have welcomed this and they would have actually supported it logistically.
That's very interesting. US sincerity. Now, this point I'd like to ask you, Javeed Saab. The United States now is asking through its different interlocutors, whether it be Alice Wells or Lisa Curtis or Mike Pompeo, that Pakistan needs to, or even through Ashraf Ghani Saab, that Pakistan needs to get involved. At the same time, Mike Pompeo talks about regional players. Now, regional players does not only involve Pakistan. Is it being done at the behest of India? Are they also somehow wanting India to get involved in this process as well, so that India continues to get that indirect hold over Afghanistan as it had over the past few years? Your take?
We know which country borders with Afghanistan. India doesn't border with Afghanistan. And to make India as a neighbor of Afghanistan, they are using the word of distant neighbor.
Exactly.
And that is at the heart of the problem. Indian footprint is there. And the fact that much of Afghanistan is not controlled by the government in Kabul, that means this is sanctuary of all kind of militants. And Indians have been funding them, particularly I would say in the southwest of Pakistan, in the Balochistan province. There has been an insurgency, and that insurgency, by the way, wasn't there before 9/11. So that is a gift we had from the Americans. Americans and Indians have reached to a conclusion that they are the ones who will have long-term strategic partnership, not with Pakistan. With Pakistan, they have a tactical partnership.
Exactly, which is time-based, which is whenever they need, on a need basis, whenever they want Pakistan in some kind of an issue, when they're embroiled in some problem, they ask Pakistan for help. When it's finished, then Pakistan is no longer
Exactly.
needed.
In this time and age, I think talking of diplomatic sincerity is something a utopian idea.
Or far-fetched, maybe?
Maybe a far-fetched, because Americans they have become so vulnerable in the battlefield. They cannot fight on the ground. They've been using airstrikes. They have conducted in first 8 months of last year more than 3,400 airstrikes on the supposed hideouts of the Daesh and Afghan Taliban. And the net result is that Afghan Taliban are controlling more territory. And now then there was a lot of enthusiasm we witnessed in the capital Kabul that perhaps there going to be ceasefire line between Afghan Taliban and the government in Kabul. That did not go beyond few days of Eid, last Eid festival. The reason being is, and then during those days, there were many attacks from the Daesh. I think this sends a signal to the Afghan Taliban that if they go for a ceasefire with the Ashraf Ghani government, or they go for some sort of deal with the Americans, that means the agenda of jihadism and the entire recruitment process may shift towards Daesh. So the Afghan Talibans will have to have a hardline position. And that hardline position means that the Americans will have to withdraw from Afghanistan. And this is very, very important. I think no longer Afghan Taliban have an option to give concession to the Ashraf Ghani government, to give concession to the Americans, because there's a lot
There's a new player in town, let's put it that way. Ikram BHatti Saab, about this new player in town, that is Daesh. Russia has also given its reservations about the presence of Daesh, so has the US. Now all of this peace process, let's talk about this, between the Afghan Taliban and the Afghan government, will it not give an edge to Daesh in the longer term? If, for example, both these parties make a peace plan, they agree to what the US and the Afghan government are demanding, and at the same time Daesh starts to gain power, will the Afghan Taliban let that happen?
Certainly not, but the fact remains that the current environment in Afghanistan is most suitable, most beneficial for Daesh.
All right.
And if there is anyone who is more interested in such a turmoil to continue in Afghanistan, then maybe India or maybe America is Daesh. because they are the one who are benefiting from it, they are the one who are growing from it, they are the one who are getting volunteers and fighters, trained, seasoned fighters who could be even defecting from Taliban or from the Afghan security forces or from TTP, but they continue to gain strength. And as I just mentioned, if Taliban reach to a compromise or they lower their position, then they're likely to have defections, and those people defecting will go and join Daesh. And but there is one thing for sure, that as and when peace comes about in Afghanistan, then I think the Americans, the current Afghan government, the Taliban and the regional players, by that I mean China, Central Asia, Russia, Iran, Pakistan, they will all join forces now against the new player, that is Daesh. They will have to, they will need to. Although there are reports which claim that the Daesh has been created or transplanted by the Americans. There were unmarked helicopters which was bringing them in the darkness of the night, and whereas we also know that when they dropped the mother of all bombs, there were 10 to 15 Indians who were found dead over there. So there are several angles and dimensions to this entire situation, but the fact remains that yes, Daesh is a new player, a very serious threat, not just to Afghanistan, but that is a threat to the entire region, because they clearly have extra regional aims and objectives. They like to influence not just the region, but maybe the world. They have global objectives, whereas Taliban are fairly innocent compared to them, because they have clearly stated that they are interested only within the borders of Afghanistan, and they want to free their country of foreign occupation. That is all. So I think not just Afghanistan, not just America or Pakistan or the regional players, but even Taliban would be interested in fighting and eliminating Daesh.
All right. Well, that only time will tell. But I'll return to one part of the statement by Mike Pompe, Javeed Saab. He says that we have seen good signs from a lot of regional partners. And he has repeated what Alice Wells also said some time ago when she had come to Pakistan. Now, haven't they seen the good signs coming from Pakistan? Haven't we always, time and again and again and again, helped Afghanistan? Even today, our Prime Minister Nasir al-Mulk Saab met with Omer Zakhilwal, the Afghan ambassador, and we still reiterate that we want bilateral relations to improve. We still reiterate that we want an Afghan-led and an Afghan-owned peace process. I mean, why do the Americans all of a sudden realize that, oh, Pakistan is on the good track? Was Pakistan not on the right track in the past?
Because they have realized that they cannot bully Pakistan. They cannot browbeat Pakistan into accepting everything that they want. You see, is a politics, and particularly geostrategic politics, go by the hard reality. The hard reality is that Pakistan is a nuclear state. It's not Libya. It's not Iraq. It's not a Yemen. You cannot attack Pakistan, and they know it. Had Pakistan not been in a nuclear state, they would have attacked Pakistan long ago. So their threats did not work. Their threats to suspend aid did not work. Their threats to suspend Pakistan non-naturalized status
remains still suspended, if you remember.
I mean, not entirely, but part of the aid was suspended. That did not work. So they have reached to conclusion that the road to the peace in Afghanistan leads via Pakistan. As I pointed out early on, they are far more suspicious about Russia. They cannot use the
also
Iranians.
about Iran, not to forget.
I mean, Iran is hostile to USA. So obviously there cannot be negotiations with Iran. So it is only Pakistan which can play an important role.
All right.
So I think in a broader picture, because we don't understand the mindset of the militants, what they are looking for, because there is a stream of recruitment continuous recruitment from within Afghanistan and outside Afghanistan for Afghan Taliban and also for the Daesh. There is a competition within the militant groups between Daesh and Afghan Taliban. Everybody wants to be showcased that they are the one who are actually fighting against the Americans, and that what they call their real jihad. Now, morally speaking, Talibans have an edge because Afghan Talibans are not as brutal as has been the Daesh. We know their brutal tactics. So Afghan Talibans are far more acceptable to the international world. And by the way, by all means, Afghan Taliban are having a parallel government. They have their diplomatic presence in Qatar. They've been visiting so many countries, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, China, and all these countries have been negotiating with them. They've been visiting Russia. So I think Americans know it at the end of the day, they will have to talk to the Afghan Taliban, and the best via media is Pakistan. Now, when we talk, what kind of solution is going to be there? The trouble is that the Taliban, they don't believe in democracy. So, I mean, at the end of the day, there has to be a solution. And if they don't believe in democracy, will they believe in democracy? I mean, there have been previously so many plans, one of which was to hand them over the eastern and the western part of Afghanistan. So what is going to be the shape of Afghan Taliban's acceptance for this Ashraf Ghani government and for the Americans?
And for peace talks, eventual results of the peace talks, what will they be?
Probably the democracy in Afghanistan is going to be redefined as jirgas.
All right.
So there is a possibility that Afghan Taliban may agree on some sort of jirga who would elect them. I mean, basically that will be a safe exit to the Americans. They can tell back home that they have established a new brand of democracy.
Well, I don't see a safe exit for the Americans, Javeed. I have to be very frank. I see a continuous presence. They will kind of try to negotiate that with the Afghan Taliban. But democracy will be redefined, says Javeed, Rana Sahab. But here in Pakistan, democracy is continuing, and we have our elections that are going to be held on the 25th, inshallah, of this month. We've had the DGISPR who had a press briefing today. He talked about these general elections. He said he talked about the army's role because of all the different conspiracy theories that are emanating from different quarters of the press and otherwise. And he said that the army will fulfill its election duties in a non-political and impartial manner. How important is the DGISPR's press briefing of today?
Well, as you said, that it is essentially important for dispelling any rumors or wrong ideas or concepts that were being spread by various elements within the country, because the fact remains that if there is anyone who's fearing failure or fearing a loss in the elections, would always come up with some theories, some conspiracy theories that certain players have acted against him or the party, whereby either the voters have been influenced or they have been denied an opportunity to cast their votes, and hence they have lost the elections. So essentially it was there to dispel all those stories and clarify the position of the army and the role of the army in the forthcoming elections. That is going to be essentially responsible for ensuring a safe environment where the voters could freely go and cast their votes. And there is no disturbance, and the entire process remains secure and peaceful. And if there are any apprehensions or rumors about the role of the army other than this, he made an attempt to dispel those and answer all the questions from different journalists who were present over there.
And the questions were quite blatant, to say the least. I mean, they talked directly of the army's influence, they talked directly of the agency influence, and the DGISPR effectively countered all those questions.
Certainly.
Now, Javeed Saab, the fact that the DGISPR also said that the army will have a more important role in deployment in all the different places where the voting is to take place, also that they are overseeing the balloting process, the ballot paper printing process, and they would also take pictures of those who are taking part in the votes to see whether the number of people who have come to vote are the same amount whose votes are being counted later. How important is transparency in elections in a country like Pakistan?
I think what DG ISPR was trying to basically let everybody know the procedure through which the ballot papers are going to be transported and defining the role of the armed forces, in what manner they are going to be deployed. And because in the past there have been allegations against them about their role in the rigging, I think that he basically tried to dispel that impression. But nonetheless, we know there have been allegations coming from former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, and then there have been a lot of campaign on the social media. The Army's role has been in the behind the scene. And I think more importantly, we need to understand one thing. What brought Pakistan military and the intelligence services in the JIT when this investigation was started against a former Prime Minister? Going by what the judgment said, that we are left with no option but to bring here for investigation the military and intelligence agencies, because all the state institutions which at that particular point of time were under the command of the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, they were not acting against him.
All right.
They were under direct and indirect influence. The point I'm trying to make, that Army's role in politics is there behind the scene, but there is an element of exaggeration coming from the PMLN.
All right. Coming to the point of exaggeration and social media, the DGISPR, answering another question, said that we do not want to control the social media. Do you feel in this day and age when anybody can say anything they want on social media, there needs to be a certain curb on it?
Certainly, you see, because as far as the state is concerned, and as far as defamation of an individual is concerned, there has to be a check and balance. You just cannot go around defaming people. Similarly, you cannot go around, damaging the interests of the country. And if there is anything contrary to the country's interest, I think it's the responsibility of the state to protect it. Similarly, it is again the responsibility of the state to protect the honor and respect of its citizens, be it on social media or elsewhere. So I think there has to be some sort of check and balance on the social media, at least on these two aspects. While of course freedom of expression is there, but then freedom of expression should not be...
Needs to have a certain limit as well.
Absolutely.
So it does not need to cross a certain grey area and go into a black area.
Absolutely.
Javeed Saab, the DGISPR also clarified, and I think that point is very important, that the Election Commission of Pakistan has issued a code of conduct for the military, and there the military is bound to implement it in executing their duties as per the orders of the Election Commission of Pakistan. Isn't that another way of clarifying also the military's role as far as the election process and the elections are concerned?
I think on the election day, that's extremely important. As compared to back in 2013, now we have more advanced technology, more quick methods to communicate the election results. And there is only something which is lacking, that is biometric system. That is not in place.
But that is also something that had been talked about in the past, will be implemented this time, but maybe it could not.
That is a part of the problem. So I think the technology itself has made rigging a bit difficult, but the rigging would be there.
All right.
But to what an extent it is going to be there, particularly in the remote regions of Pakistan, where internet might not be available. If they're available, maybe it is slow. That possibility is there. But I don't think it is going to impact in a manner that it would change the overall result and representation in the parliament.
All right. Thank you very much to both of you gentlemen, AVM Ikram BHatti Saab, also Javeed Rana Saab, for your points of views. Of course, we respect your point of views, but they are nevertheless yours. Ladies and gentlemen, two very important issues, of course, Pakistan-Afghanistan relationship, Mike Pompeo, what he's said in Afghanistan, also Lisa Curtis and Alice Wells, who've been saying about Pakistan's important role, something that Pakistan has always reiterated. And of course, when it comes to Pakistan, the elections that are going to be held in a couple of days' time now, and the Pakistan Army's role that also has been clarified in no better means, should I say, by the Director General ISPR. Two important issues that we discussed. At the end of the day, it's up to you to decide what you want. But here in this platform, we are here to discuss everything in as per a neutral manner as we can. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you inshallah tomorrow. Allah Hafiz.